Hi, and welcome to another Kentucky Derby edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I'm Brian Zipse, and as always, I have the pleasure of being joined by my illustrious partner in crime, Kentucky Derby crime this week, Matt Shifman. How are you, Matt?
I'm great, and it'll be fun to talk about the Kentucky Derby with the one and only Zipse at the track.
Zipse at the track. How'd I get that name? I'll never know. But anyway, here we are, folks, and we are excited to talk Derby with you. This week, we're going to do something a little bit different. Next week, we are going to talk about some wagering strategies that each of us have. We're going to talk about some how the race breaks down a little bit as far as pace scenarios and how we personally might be betting the race. But for now, what we wanted to do is kind of group these horses by what we think they will do as far as the horses we think are likely to win, the horses we think are most dangerous to them, the horses we think are probably not the best value, the horses we think have a good shot if you want a long shot to clunk up and get into the trifecta or possibly superfecta, and finally those horses, sorry to say, that we just don't feel like they have much chance at all. You ready to go, Matt?
I'm ready to go, absolutely.
Let's do this thing. All right, so I'm going to start with a horse to beat, and it's going to be, notice it's a singular horse to beat, Matt, because I've decided this is the most likely winner. So I'm only going to have one horse to beat, and that horse for me is Dortmund. Care to counter that?
Well, and I respect your conviction there, Brian, because there's no harder race in our country to pick a winner in than the Kentucky Derby. The favorites don't win very often. It's everything that I think we're going to talk about today, or at least certainly that I'm going to talk about, centers around the fact that it is so darn hard to pick a winner in the Kentucky Derby. So I really respect your conviction on Dortmund. And for me, with that way of thinking, I'm gonna go with three horses, and it's hard to separate, what we're going to be doing wagering wise next week, because kind of everything I'm thinking about is leaning that way. But we'll get, as you said, we'll get into those specifics next week. So my most likely winners are, I'm with you on Dortmund, I'm staying with American Pharaoh, and I'm going to use Carpe Diem. They're my most likely winners. And you might say, oh, that's not very gutsy, Matt, to be picking the top three. I agree, but as we move on down the line and to talk about how we're wagering, I got to think about those three as the likely winners.
Fair enough, Matt. And yeah, you caught me. I was going to say, well, Matt, you have the three favorites on top, but that's okay, folks. Yeah, I went out on a limb. I know a lot of you want me to pick one horse or have Matt pick one, narrow it down to one horse. So I did it. But Matt's right. It's a tough race, and picking a singular winner is no easy task. There is money to be made even if you have two of the three favorites in the trifecta. If you get a horse that's 15, 20, 40, 50 to 1 to run second, to run third in that trifecta, you're looking at some money. So don't be afraid to use the favorites. Having said that, I think Dortmund, of the three favorites, is the one that's proven to me he's a fighter. He's tactical. He can be very close, or he can be a little bit farther off it. I think he's going to love the distance. I think he's got the physicality to go a mile and a quarter and then some. So Dortmund's the one for me. Nothing against Carpe Diem, who I'm going to talk about soon, and American Pharaoh, of course, the likely favorite. But those are horses that I just put a peg down below. Matt, how about horses that you want to use? Horses with value, or horses that you like right up there with the top ones or right below the top ones, but are going to offer some bigger odds?
Sure, and I think this is certainly where you and I will start overlapping our categories between this category and Dortmund. And let me say, it's your pick on Dortmund. He's unbeaten. He's never lost. So he's the horse to pick. I'm looking forward to betting Mubtahij. For me, we're going to get some betting value there. I almost put him in the most likely to win category, but I'm looking forward to betting him. I'm also looking forward to betting Frosted also.
Yeah, Frosted moved forward nicely. Both of those are on my list of horses. I called it the horses with value. So my list is going to be a little bit bigger. Let me run down the list real quick, Matt, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your three, all three of which are on my list of 6 horses with value. I certainly think Carpe Diem is actually going to have value now in the Kentucky Derby. I think he's going to be closer to 8 to 1, which if you asked me a few weeks ago, I would have said no way he's going to be that high. But I think the Baffert horses are so hot, and so impressive looking that Carpe Diem is going to be somewhat the forgotten horse, and he's got all the tools to win the Kentucky Derby. He's not my top pick, as you know, but at 8-1, I think he offers very good value. Move to Hege. Yeah, I'm starting to think maybe he's a little bit more likely to rally up. We know he's going to like the distance, maybe rally up to third, maybe second. He's going to be running at the end, I think. Not sure if he's as brilliant as a few in here. Certainly could win. I'm worried, Matt, and I want to ask you about this. I'm worried that Move to Hege might be the wise guy horse, the one horse out of the others past Carpe Diem that all of a sudden gets bet, a lot of smart money or not so smart money, but wise guy money pours in on Move to Hege, and all of a sudden he's 9-10 to 1 and almost the same as Carpe Diem.
Yeah, it could very well happen. I mean, I think there's already been a lot of talk about the horse, so I think he's going to be a solid 4-1, and who knows, maybe even get close to Carpe Diem in the win betting.
You said 4-1, Matt. You meant
yeah, yeah. Sorry, but I meant fourth choice. Thanks, Brian.
fourth choice. Gotcha. Yeah, so double digits or maybe low double digits. We agree on that. Okay, the other I didn't mention the other three on the list. We mentioned Frosted. I'm also going to put Upstart on that list. I'm going to put Firing Line on that list. I think both are really good horses. Upstart, I think, is tough as nails, and he's eligible to improve coming off that deep Gulfstream Park track that he ran on the last couple times. I think he was unlucky in both his last two. And as a tough as nails horse, and probably one that's going to get ignored a little bit, maybe the New York bred gets up towards 20-1. I like Upstart in there. I think Firing Line is a really good horse. You know my top pick is Dortmund, so it only makes sense that the horse that he had such trouble with 2 times, he did beat him, but Firing Line gave him everything but the kitchen sink, would be on this list. I think he's going to be somewhat ignored. And finally, my top Longshot I'm going to put in this list. Probably the least likely of the 6 to win the race, but I think Danzig Moon is improving quickly. He looks good. He's working well. I like the way he finished up the Bluegrass, even though he wasn't getting close to Carpe Diem. Bred to go long on both sides of his pedigree. I like Cassie as a trainer. I think Danzig Moon at 30-1 or so might be worth a play in all spots in the exotics.
Yeah, and I think one of those horses that you mentioned is probably the horse that you and I disagree most about, and that's Firing Line. I'll talk more about that as we go into our next category, which is horses that we think are scary, but we're going to take the risk of probably leaving them out of our wagers. And for me, Firing Line is one of those horses. This year's Derby, as is the case every year, those horses that get out front, that are in the first quarter of the pack in the early running in the Derby, this is the Derby. Those horses don't get a chance to relax like they may get a chance to relax on the lead in a field of 8. In the Derby, you don't get a chance to relax regardless of what the fractions are, whether the fractions are 45 or 47. You've got a horse on your left, you got a horse on your right, and you're not going to get to relax. And I think that's going to hurt Firing Line tremendously in this Derby. I see those, out of those horses that are on the lead early, typically in the Derby, maybe one of them holds up when they get to the end of the race. California Chrome did it last year. Bodemeister did it in the past, held up for second. But it's usually only one of those horses. Then it's the rest. Then it's the rest of those front runners retreating and the other horses coming on. So for that reason, I'm going to leave out Firing Line. I know he looked great in the Sunland Derby, but you're picking Dortmund. He hasn't beaten Dortmund. Now he's running in the Derby. I think he could run well. Maybe he could get 4th or 5th, but I'm leaving him out.
Matt, I agree with everything you said as far as the pace scenario. Generally, it's just a tough road to hoe for the horses that are up in the early quarter or third, as you mentioned. Firing Line, though, is simply for me, he's too good to leave off my tickets at 15-1. I think he's that classy of a horse. I do worry that he'll get eaten up a little bit by the early pace if he's too close. But in the Sunland Derby, granted it was against inferior horses, but in the Sunland Derby, he showed me something in that he was on the rail. He had 2 or 3 horses right on his throat latch, and it almost didn't matter to him. He just, when Gary Stevens asked him to go, he went. That pressure meant nothing to him. It could be a different kind of pressure in the Derby, but stuck on the rail like that with all those horses outside him, I thought he'd be a little worse for wear. I thought he'd still win, but then he goes off and wins by 15 lengths. Firing Line might be just a very good horse that can handle the pressure and right there at the finish, maybe a free house type, if you will. Okay, we didn't talk much about Frosted, and I think he deserves mention. Matt, did the changes that McLaughlin made coming to New York, or was it the coming to New York alone from just leaving Florida? Did that propel Frosted so much that we now think he's a legitimate chance to win the Derby?
I think all those changes were the right changes. He's got a shot, but I like him in that category of he's a horse I'm gonna have to use in some of my wagers. But I think he's a little bit below the horse that I think are going to win. But everything's coming along the right way, and I agree. He's got that. We could make a whole special category of the horses that are leaving Florida that might be doing better.
Yeah, and there were some good ones down there this year. Matt, let me ask you one more question about Frosted. The Bluegrass, the result of the Bluegrass, with one horse winning relatively easy and another horse pretty easily in second, is very much like we saw in the Wood Memorial with Frosted and Contender. Which race of those two, I think I already know the answer, do you think was stronger?
Well, I certainly like Carpe Diem's performance over Frosted's.
Okay. And I'm going to go with Danzig Moon a little bit over Contender. So I guess I'm agreeing with you. But that Wood was a pretty strong performance for both of those two. All right, so we mentioned that third category. I called it scary, but I'm trying to beat them.
Yeah.
And you'll never guess who's on top of my list, Matt.
Who's on top of your list? I think it'll be a surprise, but we haven't heard his name yet. So go ahead, Brian.
The Kentucky Derby favorite himself, American Pharoah, Matt. So I talked about my one horse to beat, my 6 horses with value. The thing about American Pharoah for me is I don't think he offers value. If we're talking 5-2, 3-1, something like that, maybe even 7-2 at the most, I don't think he's worth it as a bettor, as a handicapper, as a gambler. Sure, he could win. Sure, he could prove to be like so many think that he is the best horse in this crop. Having said that, the best horse doesn't always win. He's never been pressured in any of his 4 wins. I think he's had it a little bit too easy for his own good when he gets to the Derby. I worry more about him and that pace scenario that you set up where it's tough on the horses early on that are close or on the lead than I do Firing Line, frankly. He could outrun all of that. Horses have done that. But at 3-1, I might have him in some of my multi-race tickets as a saver, but he's not going to be a horse I use much at those odds because I think the value just isn't there.
Yeah, it's tough to take a big favorite in the Derby in the 20-horse field with particularly this contentious Derby.
Yeah, and people might be saying, well, Dortmund's going to be pretty close. That's true, but I think Dortmund at 4-1 offers a lot more value. I do like him slightly better than American Pharoah because of the dynamics of the 1.25 mile and the 20 horses than American Pharoah. So that 4-1 offers a lot more value to me than American Pharoah. 2 others I put on this list, Matt. International Star, who you really have to like as a racehorse after those 3 straight wins at Fairgrounds. I just think he might be just a cut below the best here. And then the other one is Materiality, the other undefeated horse who's 3 for 3.
Yeah, and I've got Materiality in that category also, Brian, for all the reasons and more so the reasons that I talked about with Firing Line. All those reasons go with Materiality, but he's lacking in the experience department. But again, he could be a heck of a racehorse, and he's moving from Florida, so who knows? Sometimes you got to take a stand, and Materiality will not be a big player in my wagers.
Yeah, Matt, I think what you said is true. I think American Pharoah is an excellent horse. I think Materiality is probably an excellent horse as well. But we're talking about the Kentucky Derby and their chances to win or run up to their odds in the Kentucky Derby. And I think Materiality, as one of the 5th, 6th favorite, is not really worth it because of what you mentioned, the inexperience, the fact that he's probably going to be part of that pace to some degree. So we agree on that one. International Star, are you going to play him at all?
I will probably play him in my trifecta kind of wagers because with the way he's run and his performance and the way that Maine has been riding him, I could see him getting a piece. And even though those Louisiana horses haven't won the Derby in past years, they've gotten into the money a fairly good number of times.
Yeah, good point. Maybe he's more of that horse to get into the exotics than some of the others. Okay, Matt, we've talked about the top 9 favorites as I see them. My top long shot, Danzig Moon. Who is your top long shot to get in, whether it be winning or just getting into the exotics?
Um, in that category, I will certainly include Far Right. I like the way he's run. I think he's coming around well. I like the break that he had before the Arkansas Derby. So I think we got a relatively fresh horse. I like his running style. Again, I don't see him as a winner, but he's in that category. He's a horse that I'm going to need to include. And the rest of my list there, we've talked about Upstart. Been hearing only good things about him. I was really worried when he was a little sick and that on top of the rigors of his campaign, but I don't know. He seems to be bouncing back well. Danzig Moon, I agree with you on that, on liking that horse, and maybe a little bit of Contender because he's going to be a bomb.
Yeah, Contender and good old George Weaver, trainer, bringing his first horse. We know George Weaver well on the East Coast and in Kentucky for sure. George Weaver bringing his first Derby horse in Contender. He should be 40-1 or more. I agree. And Matt, good call on Far Right. I don't know if he's going to be as high as some of the bombs. Maybe he's under 30-1. But to picture Far Right in the bottom few early, 18th, 19th, 20 early, with a solid pace and a lot of horses backing up, Far Right is a very likely candidate to rally for 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th. Now, 5th or 6th probably won't do you much good, but if he's able to pass enough horses for 3rd and 4th, Far Right seems more like a 10-1 shot to do that sort of thing rather than maybe the 30-1, 25-1 that he'll be on the odds board.
Yeah, and I agree. Well said, Brian. And going back to what I was saying about those horses that are in the early running part of the field, not getting a chance to relax. Really, the only horses that get a chance to relax in the beginning of the race are the ones that are towards the back of the pack. They can get their feet under them, they can relax, and when their riders make moves, they can start picking off horses and make their move and hope for at least a decent trip when they're doing that.
Exactly. You got to get a little lucky with traffic, but yeah, I like Far Right's chances to at least rally into the top third of the field. So he's worth an exotics play. The other horses, I call this category, by the way, this is our 4th category. I called it could get a piece. So you kind of get the idea that these aren't horses we're picking to win, but maybe 3rd, maybe 4th, maybe 5th. We've seen some long shots do it. Golden Soul did it. Commanding Curve did it in the last couple of years alone. This year might be tougher for them because of the depth of quality of horses. But the other ones I put on the list, besides Far Right, were War Story, Contender, as you already mentioned, and I guess Fermento, if he gets in, would be on that list for me, but he might not get in. War Story, I think, if he runs a good race, proves to getting back to Churchill Downs, he could be one of those horses that runs a surprisingly good race.
I agree.
Okay, and then that leaves the category I called Not For Me, and I just wrote everyone else. I don't like a lot of horses in the field. In fact, I've started doing my yearly toss a hoss list, and I started already in the last 2 days with Mr. Z and with Ocho Ocho Ocho. Tomorrow I'm looking maybe at Bolo, maybe Made from Lucky, maybe it's a knockout. There's some horses I think that we can safely assume won't get into the exotics. Is that right, Matt?
Yes, I agree. I think any of the horses that we haven't mentioned, the other 10, so to speak, are not even going to be in my thoughts for wagering.
Okay, so we went over these 5 categories. Hopefully that helped you out. I'm going to put my partner on the spot. He didn't know I was going to do this. Matt, we have 10 days until the Derby. I want to know your superfecta in order as of 10 days. I'm not going to hold you to this, but I want to know as of today, Wednesday, what's your top 4?
My you want my top 4 horses to win it?
1, 2, 3, 4.
To win it, or you want me to give you the superfecta? So here,
no, I don't forget about odds. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. My top four are American Pharaoh, Dortmund, Carpe Diem, and Mutahij.
Nice. That's a good group. I'm gonna do the same thing, subject to change, post positions and everything, and we got to see the works a little bit. But I'm gonna go with Dortmund, Carpe Diem, Mubtahij, American Pharaoh in fourth. Remember, I said he's just not worth the price, but I still have him in my top four. And my fifth horse, Matt, is narrowly Upstart over Firing Line and Frosted.
Okay.
Going with that New York bred.
Good. Can't argue with that.
I heard Lucas say this morning at Churchill that American Pharaoh is the best looking horse he's seen in years.
Wow.
We'll see. I'm gonna leave you with that, guys. Thank you again for watching HorseCenter. Matt, thanks for joining me on another Kentucky Derby edition. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you, Brian, again, and thank you for everybody that's been watching the show and sharing comments with Brian and I through all kinds of different social media. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that goes for you, Joe, and also you, Ethel. Thank you. Personal thanks to you, too. All right, folks, thanks again for joining us. We've been brought to you by HorseCenter and Derby Wars. We're going to see you next Wednesday. I'll be at Churchill Downs. Matt will be back in New Jersey. We'll see you for another Kentucky Derby edition of HorseCenter.